You're listening to the Coaching Cast podcast with Suzy and Lisa. We are super lucky to have this 7th season sponsored by our friend and YouTube's top breath coach, Mike Mayer from Take a Deep Breath. Mike is the first official sponsor of this podcast and specialises in reducing stress and anxiety through practical, fun and science-based breathing techniques. You can get started for free by clicking on the link in the show notes and downloading a free guided audio breathing exercise from Mike. Say goodbye to stress and hello to a more relaxed and chilled state of mind. And if you're interested in being a sponsor on this podcast, you can contact us by emailing hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Suzy.
And I'm Lisa, and this is the Coaching Cast. We're the no-nonsense podcast, chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's ever-changing workplace.
We discuss different topics each episode, sharing our ideas, hints and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because taking yourself too seriously, well, it's just boring. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we are talking about storytelling in the workplace. We explore the art of a good story, how they can be used in the world of work, and our top tips for building your storytelling confidence. So stay with us and enjoy. So before we get into this week's episode, which is actually our final episode of this season. So this is our finale episode, episode 10 of season 7. So before we get into it and talk about storytelling, what have you been up to? What's been going on?
So we're going to launch straight into a story then. So, well, you know, technically that's what you and I try to
Love
do
it.
in every How Are You, is tell each other a story of what's been going on. So if you recall last week on Tuesday when we recorded episode 9, I was getting excited because I was off to have a massage in the afternoon. That was going to be my treat. And it was the first time I'd visited this particular beauty place. Established. I was like, what do you call it? It wasn't a spa. I think they thought they were a spa, but I'm telling you now, they were not a spa.
Oh, tell me more.
So I was really looking forward to this particular massage. And let's just say it was a disappointment. So I like a good, firm massage. And I
don't
literally,
know why I'm laughing.
Yeah, well, it sounds inappropriate straight away. But this was like an hour of being stroked.
Oh, no.
It was so dissatisfying. So I arrived and the place looked really nice. I thought, oh, this place is nice. And this woman welcomed me in and she just launched straight into, you know, the whole like get your kit off routine and lie down there. And I was like, oh, okay. I was thinking, are we not going to talk about my needs and whether I've got any particular areas of interest where I'd like some extra attention? Are we not going to talk about my general health?
Preamble.
But yeah, whether I've got any injuries, you know, that's kind of standard practice. If you're a professional massage establishment, you have to go through those things, I think, for health and safety as well. No, none of that. She was just like, right, get on the bed, get your kit off. I was thinking, oh, bloody hell. It's a bit forward. And then she started at my feet. Now, I've had a lot of massages. Swedish massages especially. Now, you always start at the top and you work your way down. You work at your shoulders, your back, and then you work down. And I think it's because of the way you're supposed to be moving the tension out of your body through your feet. You know, the way you circulate, not pushing it all back in. Anyway, I had actually taken the initiative of being forthcoming and saying my back's particularly sore on the left side around my left shoulder blade. So I'd really like some attention around there. Well, she spent about half an hour on my thighs and my calves. I was thinking, that is not my left shoulder blade. So And it was lots of stroking. It was very disconcerting, and to be fair, I felt like I was being oiled up like some sort of chicken for the roast. I mean, it was very strange. Because especially because I asked her, "Oh, what oil are you using?" And she did say sunflower. Now I nearly did laugh out loud because I was thinking sunflower oil. I mean, I'm used to someone saying, "I've got lavender, I've got, some sort of," but sunflower oil. I was thinking I literally am being basted. So it was a very bizarre experience. I didn't find any of it relaxing because I spent the whole time thinking, why are you in my calf area? I was literally clock watching. I was thinking, I think she spent at least a third of the time on one thigh.
She didn't sprinkle any like dried rosemary or salt and pepper on you at the
bit
same
of oregano.
time.
No, it was
Seasoned you up.
Well, I felt that way. And then when she eventually got to my back, I mean, it was weird. It was overall extremely disappointing. Thankfully, I think I had a 20% off voucher discount because they're new. So I didn't pay very much for it. But they were like, here's a loyalty card. So that, the more you come, the more you get off. I was like, I will never come back again. I'm like, no way. The fact that this was Tuesday, by Thursday, I still had backache. I was thinking, yeah, that just didn't do it. It was so rubbish. What a letdown.
Oh my God. I love the fact that she used sunflower oil. That's
I know.
brilliant.
I got home and I just felt so
disappointed.
Well, I was disappointed, but I felt so oily and sticky and like it was just I actually checked out when she said, "Oh, you like that's finished, it's all over." I was thinking, "Oh, thank God for that." And she said, "Oh, you can put your clothes back on now." I checked out the products while she was out the room because I was thinking, I was half expecting to see like, a local supermarket own brand plastic oil bottle that you find in your kitchen or a vat just sitting on the side with like sunflower oil. Anyway, no, it was one of those pump action, but all it said on it was relax oil. I was thinking that's budget. That's so budget. So yeah, I won't be going there again. Honestly.
Well, that is a good story to bring to the season finale about storytelling. And I love the fact that you basically had a stroke with some sunflower oil getting you ready for a roast dinner, essentially.
Yeah, for a roasting. Honestly.
For a roasting. Love it. Oh my God, that's so good. Well, actually, on the subject of having a massage, that actually links really well into the story I was going to tell, because do you remember a couple of episodes ago I shared that I'd hurt my back, or that my back had gone into spasm?
Yes, during an online meeting.
During a Zoom call. Not my finest moment, I'll be honest. Well, it was all fine. I'd done my YouTube physio. It was all
Oh, that's
fine.
Right. You're self-medicated.
Well, I'm going to come back to that in a second. So I was all fine. I was still a bit gingerly kind of aware of it when I was working out and walking and stuff, but I was fine, all good. And then basically on Thursday, so last week, my son was like, "Can we go to soft play tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine."
Every parent's worst nightmare.
Well, actually, you got to be strategic. Well, I find, and I am strategic about soft play, right? I go to the smallest one, the one where I can either see him and there's like less hazards. And I never go on a weekend. Choose your day, choose your time. Lunchtime, great time to go. There's a top tip for you, because most people have gone by that point. Lunchtime is a great time. Anyway, we also had the nursery bear with us because, oh God. So anyone who's got kids at nursery will probably know that you have to take it in turns to host the nursery bear, right? And you take it on all the activities with you, and you've got to photograph it and then write its diary, and it has a little suitcase and like, cute, yes, but it's just like another thing to add to the mental load. You get me?
Yeah.
Anyway, Arthur's like, it's bear's called Bertie. So like, let's take Bertie Bear to soft play. I was like, really? I could do without taking Bertie Bear to soft play, but fine. So anyway, I'm not gonna, be the one to destroy Bertie Bear's soft play dreams. So in he comes with us, all going fine. Anyway, we're kind of careering around soft play, Bertie Bear is on the coffee table. So I've managed to get Arthur, to realise that we don't need to take Bertie Bear into the actual kind of play area, because I didn't want him to get lost, etc. So he's standing guard, he's watching everybody. We're going around, careering around, and I'm like, yeah, fine. Forgotten that I'd hurt my back a week before. Okay, completely forgotten. That was old news. Last week's news. So there's these two kind of like circular kind of steps, and they've got like a hole in, and you kind of climb through the hole, if you know what I mean, onto the next one, and then onto a platform. So off I am doing that, thinking, look at me, like active mum. Yeah, I'm so cool. Bertie Bear's watching me. He's thinking she's a cool mum. Yeah, I did my back in, didn't I? As I twisted through the hole onto the platform.
Oh,
and I'm
God.
like, oh, so off we go again. I'm like, oh, I've done my back. And to get home, and then over the course of the afternoon, basically this discomfort in my lower back is accelerating at quite a rapid pace. And I'm thinking, I need to go and see somebody, right?
Goodness.
So I'm ringing round like physios, osteopaths, whatever in Cheshire. I tell you what, there is a gap in the market. If anyone wants to be or is an osteopath and they are in the Cheshire area, you need to set up a practice, because I couldn't get an appointment till the 15th of May. I was like, I am in pain right now. I need some help. Anyway. So then my husband's like, oh, I think through my work, you can ring this helpline and speak to somebody. So give me this number. So ring in this person, get an appointment booked with Alison, right? So I'm thinking, right, Alison's going to sort me out here. She's going to give me a referral. I'm going to get in like tomorrow. I'm going to be great. I'm sorted. So anyway, still in discomfort at this point. So get this call back from Alison. We go through all these questions. She's a very nice lady. She gets me to do all these exercises. We get to the end of the conversation. She goes, right, Suzy, I'm going to give you some exercises to do. I was like, what? She's like, I'm going to give you some exercises to do, and we're going to see how that goes for 3 weeks. I was like, for God's sake. So I was like, right. Anyway, she sends me this follow-up email, right, with these exercises on. I go on it. It's the link to the YouTube video that I've already been using.
No. Oh, well, I take it back. Clearly, it was an effective method. I hope you didn't pay.
And I'm still no further forward, guys. I'm still can't get to see an osteopath or a flipping physio. I've still got a dodgy back, and Bertie Bear's just laughing his head off at me. So yeah, anyway.
Goodness.
Anyway. So YouTube physio is where it's at, guys. That's all I'm going to say. Great. All right, let's get into today's episode then. We're going to be talking about storytelling in the workplace. Having recently attended TEDx Manchester, an inspiring event brimming with learnings, anecdotes, and top tips, there is one thing I remember more clearly than anything else from that day, and that is a story. The incredible story of a superhuman nurse who discovered she could smell Parkinson's disease. Now, I consumed a lot of information over that day, and as time has gone on, my brain has filtered a lot of it out, but I can still remember that one incredible story. The finer details, the point behind it, and also how it made me feel. So this got us thinking at the Coaching Cast about storytelling. What is it about stories? Their use and power within the workplace is often underestimated. Stories can change the way we think, act, and feel. They can form the building blocks of workplace cultures, and they have huge power and potential to inspire us all. Stories capture our imaginations, illustrate our ideas, awaken our passions, and inspire us in a way that cold, hard facts often just can't. So why is it when it comes to telling a story, many of us are at a loss? We shy away and often hold ourselves back in sharing our stories at work. So Lisa, have you ever come across anyone in your career who has perfected the art of good storytelling?
This is really interesting because actually I have utilized storytelling myself in the workplace and used it as a technique to engage. I'm unsure in my memory whether that was inspired by anyone else who I'd witnessed doing it, or whether that was more of a technique that I'd learned about or read about and then decided to employ. So I do think there were individuals who I found particularly engaging at work. And I don't know whether it was necessarily that they told a good story, but I do know that the reason I found them engaging was because of how they shared information, in terms of they brought energy, they spoke clearly, and often what I found engaging was the authenticity they brought to everything that they shared. So it was honest, it was often relatable, it was spoken in language that could easily be understood to the audience at the time. It was relevant, if that makes sense. And I do think that's something you've always got to think about when you tell a story, is who are you telling it to, and adapting as necessary. And actually, it could at times be quite personal. And because I am an individual who really values authenticity and honesty, and I love personability, I think I was always engaged in that approach anyway. And it's interesting how you referenced the TEDx experience you had in Manchester and the story shared by the superhuman nurse, because actually I think a lot of what I've just talked about in terms of elements were present in that example. So yeah, so I can't think of anyone particularly off the top of my head that I would say that really stands out as being a great storyteller. It's probably more that actually just the techniques they utilized and how they did it is what I find memorable. But I do recognize storytelling as a really powerful technique, and I do know that I've employed it myself.
So I know somebody, I've actually got a call with them later today. So it's annoying that I haven't got a call with them before we recorded this podcast. A guy called Mike. He is an absolutely brilliant storyteller, and he uses stories a lot in his practice and in his work. He's a coach, and he has a real skill of formulating stories to kind of demonstrate theory or points that he's trying to land, but in a way, in the stories that he tells and the examples he uses, it brings those concepts to life in just quite a straightforward way. And as we all know, I am a simple, straightforward human. So I need simplicity. That's how I kind of get it and I learn. So his stories always really resonate really well with me. He is phenomenal at storytelling. And I suppose, what does he do? He sets it up. So he says very clearly, like, I'm just going to share a story with you now, or I'm going to like let you know a story, or I've got a story here that brings this to life. And so he kind of signposts it in the conversation. He sets it up really well. And so because immediately, like, stories are a bit different in the workplace or in work conversations, for some reason he's immediately got my attention. Like, I'm like, oh, I want to hear more. Oh yeah, like, tell me about the story. Because it's not like, here's a pie chart, this percentage is 25%, this percentage is 33%, these are the key trends. Like, that's all really, really important. But my engagement is immediately higher when someone's like, I've got a story to tell you, because it just feels different.
Yeah. I think it sparks our imagination.
Exactly.
I mean, we've as human beings, we've employed storytelling since day dot. I mean, if you think about it, using religion as an example, a lot of the religious texts that exist are based on stories. So the Bible is based heavily on stories. And I think so much of how we've learned over our lifetime. So when you think about school, and even when you're small as a child, the way we engage in information and we learn information is through storytelling. And I think it sparks our imagination. And that's where the creativity, like where the engagement, the heightened engagement comes from, because actually it's a way to digest information in a much more inspiring, interesting way. And that's where I think the power of it comes from.
He's like, thinking about Mike, he really sets the scene really well as well. I remember, like, I was doing some training with him at the end of last year, and he told this story where he set this scene about, he was training to be a professional sportsman around like javelin, and he sets this scene about how he was at it was a particular evening. I remember that it was winter. Like, why do I remember that? Like, oh, so random, but that's really resonating with me. So again, my imagination's been sparked. I can start to picture what a winter evening might look like. I remember him saying, like, it was cold, but it wasn't too cold because we were still outside, but I was a bit anxious and that wasn't helping my breathing because, like, of how cold it was. And again, I can remember all of these details.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wasn't there. And the story he's referring to is like 25 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, he tells this and he really sets the scene.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was really hooked. And so he goes on to, you know, tell this story. It's about performance, basically, and it's about marginal gains. So the more you you know, focus on something little by little, often frequently, you get that gain. So, you know, it was really, really interesting, and that's way more impactful for me, hearing that story and bringing that concept to life around marginal gains, than just talking to me about what marginal gains are.
100%. And what it sounds like as well is Mike is tapping into all of your senses. And again,
exactly,
that's such an incredible technique with impactful storytelling, is to do exactly that, where you start connecting in how you're describing to, you know, what you can see, what you can smell, what you can hear, what you're feeling. Because that actually, as it's being described, it actually can awaken all of those senses in ourselves, because we know what that can feel like. We know what that can sound like. We know what that can look like. But even as you're describing it, it's actually sparking off all of those senses to us. It's accessing memories of our own. And that's where you're creating that huge depth in what you're saying, that therefore is connecting with you, and to the point where now it's memorable because it stays with you. To your point, so much more than just saying marginal gains are this.
Yeah, because I was just like,
just talking about flat facts and data.
Exactly. So on this idea then of like storytelling, and your storytelling confidence, because it is a skill,
yes,
to be able to tell a good story.
Yeah, and
actually there is a confidence that comes with embarking on it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your own storytelling confidence at the moment?
I would probably say it's a 7. So I really enjoy stories, and as I've already shared, I recognize the power of storytelling, and it was a technique that I employed when I was in a leadership role a number of years ago, when sharing information with individuals. And I actually found storytelling really, really powerful when initiating change. And it was often during change initiatives in the department that I was in that I would encourage us to utilize storytelling to bring it to life and to enable it to be engaging for individuals, and to help share around, you know, the context of, well, why are we going through this change, and let's talk about it in terms of a bit of a start, middle, end. Let's incorporate your heroes and your villains, because they're such key characters within a story. And again, that's your traditional storytelling that people are totally aware of. I mean, it's the structure of storytelling that is as old as time. That's the foundation of all films, books. You know, Walt Disney totally capitalized on that whole structure of storytelling, as do Marvel. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's what we all recognize. So we used to encourage our management team together to pull together that kind of structure to enable messages we were sharing, initiatives to be more engaging. So it's definitely something I'm conscious of and feel fairly confident in. I know it's actually a technique I've utilised heavily in my coaching when I'm marketing myself and when I'm talking to people about the idea of coaching, is to share actually my story of how I found coaching, because I find that brings coaching to life in a much more tangible way. But I think where I could be even better is around the way I tell the story. So I can always be more concise. I use 1,000 words when I could use 100. And I think conciseness is a real key factor in storytelling, because if it isn't punchy, you'll lose people quite quickly, because none of us have a particular long attention span. So I think conciseness is where I could improve. And I also think, listening to how you describe Mike as a storyteller, I could be better at accessing all the senses as well, which is not something I'm confident in doing yet.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a 7 as well, at the moment, and I would say that's grown. I'd say maybe 3-4 years ago, I was probably a 4.
Wow, so that's a big growth, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say like there's been definitely some growth there. I think the reason for that is I've become more confident in using it in my toolkit than maybe I was in the corporate setting, which is kind of what we alluded to in the intro, is that, you know, when you're in an organization, sometimes it can feel a bit different using stories, because it's about, you know, tapping into that imagination, which doesn't feel as kind of traditional in that more corporate setting. So I've become more confident about using it in my toolkit, and similar to you, I use stories a lot in my coaching practice with clients. I also use stories a lot in my training workshops, especially when I'm talking about sales, because I find that people have a bit of a blocker anyway when it comes to talking about sales and stories. Stories really can bring some of those concepts to life in terms of how we might want to approach sales, and also about actually the fact that it's just really a conversation and building a relationship with people. But anyway, we're not talking about sales today. We're talking about storytelling. But
we could do a whole episode on sales, though.
we could. So storytelling is then a really powerful tool to bring some of those theories and concepts to life, I've found. And, you know, especially in training, I think when you know, we've all been there, haven't you? When you sign up and you think, right, I've got half day training here, time out my diary, I've got a million emails I should be looking at, I've got stuff on my to-do list I need to be getting on, but I've got to go to this training. And I think, you know, I'm very passionate about ensuring that the training I do is very memorable for the right reasons. And stories play into that quite a lot, for me. So yeah, I've become more confident using stories. I think I've still got work to do and work in progress, definitely. And you know, our CBPs may be judging us now on the stories we tell at the start of our episodes around, you know, when we talk about our weeks and how we've been and what we've been up to and stuff. Because I'm now sitting here reflecting, thinking, God, that story I just told, did it have a like really clear point to it? I'm not sure. Did it? You know,
don't go to soft play.
Don't go to soft play. And you know, just, do you know what I mean? Kind of thinking about it now, I'm reflecting back, I'm like, oh no, what did that story say? So I think there's a piece there around, you know, becoming confident about that formula, I suppose, and what makes the elements, the ingredients of a good story, but it's very, very powerful. So we've touched a bit upon it there, but, you know, when do you think storytelling has a role at work? What scenarios does it really, really come on into its own?
So I think storytelling can be really powerful in many different scenarios. And I think if you start to utilize it and practice doing it, you'll find actually that it becomes a habit of how you engage people. Now, you've mentioned training. I think if you do any training or teaching of any kind, employing storytelling to bring concepts to life is really engaging. And I think it really helps to give people focus. I think it energizes sessions, and I think it was also really great in training to share your stories and to invite others to do the same. I think that is a really great way of building a very inclusive, trusting learning environment where people have the ability to learn from one another, because we all have the ability to do that, I think, because all of us have got our own experiences and we can start learning from each other's experiences and what's worked, what's not worked, if we so invite it. So I think when you tell a story, actually what you're doing often is sparking inspiration in other people about their own stories that could be relevant, and encourage them to also share. So I think training is a really great scenario. I think sharing any form of message, I think if you're in a role that, you know, especially in a management role, it is part of your responsibility to share messages, whether that's around the organization, whether that's actually to do with initiatives you're leading on, you know, even if it's your team and you're sharing information in, like, across departments with, you know, in terms of engaging others who you want to collaborate with. Any messages you're ever sharing or communicating, I think, can have a lot more power if you consider how to share information in a storytelling sense, because it's always going to help people to engage, be interested. It adds energy and creativity to a space, which is inspiring for others. I think it really helps actually other people to think.
Yeah,
definitely. You're tapping into more of the creative parts of everybody's brains. You're not sharing information flat. It helps with that absorption. So I think sharing information, training, as I said, change initiatives, I've always found storytelling so helpful with trying to progress change, you know, around whether it's change in process, change in policy, change in system, change in, you name it. You can do it in any context. I think it just helps people just to sit and absorb. And to do so in a, you know, storytelling is playful. I think that's the other thing. We haven't talked about that, but it is playful. So actually, it often enables people to relax. And again, if you're in a more relaxed state, you absorb information a lot better because you're open. You know, when we're in a bit high stress mode, and change often triggers stress quite quickly, because people do, you know, accept change in very different ways. But actually, it really helps to keep people in a relaxed state, so they're much more open-minded.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think any workplace that utilizes play more is a much more creative, open, inclusive space. I don't think that's not done enough in workplaces. You know, when we're all so formal and serious, you close people down. It does the opposite.
And that's really interesting, because that also leads into a scenario where I think storytelling becomes really powerful, but it's slightly utilized in a slightly different way, which is around conflict. So I've been in a situation before where, like, a couple of colleagues haven't been getting on, or you can see there's tension there. And I've been like, right, I'm going to help facilitate, and also it was my role really to just help facilitate the movement, the progress of this, so that this conflict is resolved and we can all move forward. And I remember being in a meeting where I was having a one-to-one with one of the people, and I was going to have a one-to-one with the other person as well. But to this particular individual, I just said, okay, you know, we know there's some challenges with this person in this situation. Okay, so just talk to me. What's the story? And I just said that. So, like, what's the story? And this person then tells me absolutely their version of events. But because I used the word story, so like, what's the story? Then the way they responded back was actually quite different to how I knew they would have responded if I just asked, like, what's been going on. So they kind of started very much at, like, the beginning, which the beginning in this instance was like 2.5 years ago. And they kind of set that context. And as they were telling their story, which essentially is their version of events.
Yeah.
And I say their story, like I'm not mocking it. I'm like, it's their, in this instance, it is their story because it's real to them. It's true to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's their experience. It's their lived experience, their lived story of this situation, and their story of how we've got to this point. But actually, I began to realize more about why they were struggling, why there was conflict there, because they'd started kind of quite a long way back in time, like 2.5 years ago, and things began to make a bit more sense now, because I didn't know any of that, and actually I only knew kind of more of the short-term stuff that had been going on. And sometimes I was reflecting and thinking, if I hadn't used that word story, would I have known some of that longer term context in detail? Would that have just been missed? Because actually they would have just focused on the here and now of what's going on. And I think I've used it a few times actually with people around, like, yeah, what's the story? And I'm always at the end of it surprised to the level of depth and information that comes from me asking that question. I think it's a great question for you to use to really explore if there's tension there, if there's conflict there, if you want to get a bit deeper, but don't want to do that in a way that's quite formulaic. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah, absolutely.
And it's a bit of a different kind of vibe to things, and gets people thinking a little bit deeper and a little bit differently, and they'll interpret that question how they want to in terms of their story, what they want to share.
Yeah. And again, I think just the word story, it does connect with our childlike state. It goes into that more playful space, and that's where I think you'll get people relaxing, opening up, and actually considering, well, what is my start, middle, end?
Yeah.
What is the journey through that period of time? So I do think it helps to move you into a different headspace. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, so what do you think makes a good story then? So what is a formula to a good story? You talked there about having a clear start, middle, and end.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good piece of the formula?
Absolutely. I think it has to have structure, and I think this comes back to therefore then helping you to be concise. So keep the story focused. So I think the more you've got that structure of a start, middle, and an end, even if the end is not yet set in stone, it could be an end in the future, and maybe the end is open, but you can give a sense of where we're going. I think that's really important as a first part. I think the other is considering the traditional sense of a story and its structure. Nearly all stories, like I said, they've got a lead character, they've got a protagonist, they've got a hero, they've got a villain. Like some of the best stories, when you think about it, they're like I can't remember what they're called. I think it's something like your moral stories, the ones that teach us about morals and values. They nearly always have that scenario where the protagonist needs to overcome a challenge, and it's about how they go about that and what they encounter along the way. And you can totally adopt that in a work context, because you can talk about it in respect of, well, who are the characters within the story? It's the team, or teams plural. Who's the lead protagonist? Well, in most stories you tell at work, you're asking the listener to put themselves in the shoe of the protagonist, because it's about them being incorporated within it. And then it's like, well, who are the heroes, who are the villains? And don't read too much in the villain word. But then it's like, well, what's the challenge we've got to overcome? Well, again, you can totally bring that into a work context, because so much of a lot of what we're doing in work is always about resolving problems, challenges, navigating situations. And then you can articulate and say, what's the end goal? Where do we want to conclude this story? Where's the point we want to meet? Where's the point we want to reach? So I think it's thinking about it always in that way, and then considering the description, because I think that is where you can then really embellish and elevate your story. It's how you actually bring it to life. And so I would think about that in terms of your description. How do you tap into all the senses? Because that is so powerful as a technique. And how can you bring some energy to it and some physicality? because that is also what is particularly engaging when you're in the audience listening to a story. It is the way the person is holding themselves, moving around. I'm not saying you have to put your arms in the air and do a dance or anything, but you do have to get quite, be animated, because that is engaging. So you do have to think about your tone of voice, your body, how you're moving around, how you're actually maintaining eye contact. Is that kind of actual then thinking about the presentation of the story that's quite important.
Bit of humour as well, bit of humour peppered
always
in.
Yeah, always add a bit of humour. I'm a lover of being a bit of a comic in that respect. I think humour brings lightness, and again, it helps people absorb. It's all about how do you think about your audience. Always, that's so important with a storytelling. Think about your audience. Who are they? And what is the message you're trying to get across through your story? So how can you make that easy for them? How can you make it enjoyable?
Yeah, how can you make it memorable? So people, a bit like me and Mike, that story is telling me, which 25 years ago, I've still remembered the elements of it. I wasn't there. You told me that story nearly 5 months ago now, but I've still got it there in my mind. That story that I heard at TEDx, can remember all of those finer details about that lady's career, about the relationship with her husband. The first time she realized that she could smell something that was very different and that she had this superpower. I can remember all of these random things, and our brains get so full. We filter a lot of information out, but actually the more we digest stories, the more we hear them, actually they tend to be the things that stick a bit more. And we
absolutely. And you make such a good point there. So, we were recently talking to Sam Flynn about digital well-being, and she shared the point around how quickly we lose focus at work, and how it sounds like that's lessening even further because we're just inundated with information 24/7. Now that we are so connected to our phones, social media is everywhere. The fact that we can literally look at our phone and scroll and just be having information thrown at us constantly. It's true in the workplace as well. So actually, storytelling is a great way to engage with individuals in a completely different format that enables us to consume really important facts and pieces of information in a way that will stay with us, that can counteract all of that digital, and help us to focus.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got some bare bones of some top tips there that we were talking about in order to embrace storytelling at work and actually just giving it a go and going for it, seeing what happens, and becoming a bit more confident about adding it into your toolkit at work. So we're going to collate our top tips and share them with you at the end of this episode.
It is now time for Bullshit Bingo, where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which make us both cringe. Our Bullshit Bingo for today's episode came from one of you, our CBBS, and I think it's a good one to end the season on. It is flush it out.
This is really, a good one.
It's so good. I love this one. So yeah, come on then, Suze. Flush it out.
Flush it out. I don't know, I kind of say it a bit aggressively there, didn't I? Like, flush it out. Never heard it used, I don't think. Never used it myself. But I think if I had heard it used in the workplace, it would evoke a similar reaction in me to triage, which is I would just probably have to stand up, shout no, be repulsed, and then sit back down.
I've heard thrash it out, which, like, let's thrash this out.
Yeah.
When we're struggling with a problem and we need to do some brainstorming, it's like, let's thrash this out. I don't think I've ever heard flush it out.
I feel like this is quite American.
Quite possibly. Some of the best bullshit bingos that are just totally bizarre I do find are American.
I feel like I can hear this being said with an American accent. Is that really bad?
Sorry to all of our American listeners.
Yeah, sorry.
For the stereotyping here. Actually, maybe you should message us and let us know whether our assumption is true. Is flush it out an Americanism, or
was it a saying?
Or have we just made that up? Flush it out.
Would like to know, definitely. But yeah, it's a great one. It is a great one. This CBB heard it at work and sent us a DM and said, I've got one for you, I've just heard, and this is what it is. So can you imagine what their reaction must have been when they heard this? Like,
what was the context? Did they not tell you how it was used?
No, they just said, I've just heard this. Yeah. And then I was like, that is a great one. That is
It is a good one.
Good.
Flush it out. Brilliant.
So yeah, flush it out. So I wonder if many other people have heard of it. I don't know.
Well, let's see.
Let us know.
Let us know if you've heard this, and if you have, how have you heard it? I would love to start receiving these bullshit bingos in sentences so that we can actually hear how they're being used, because that would be even funnier. So yeah, if you are aware of flush it out and how it was used, or if you're the CBB that actually messaged it to us, please can you get in touch and just let us know. So yeah, so that's our season finale bullshit
That's
bingo.
our season finale. And I would say that is a good one.
It is a good one.
Conclude the season on.
So don't forget, keep sending them through to us. Season 8 will be coming later this year, so we will need more bullshit bingos for that. So please email them to us at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, or as this CBB did, you can DM us on Instagram if you visit @thecoachingcast, and just drop them in as you hear them. That's even better. Fabulous.
We are coming to the end of today's episode, where we've been discussing storytelling in the workplace. Our top tips from today's episode are: number 1, who are your audience and what is the message to your story? Number 2, think about the formula to a good story. We think the formula has the following components: has a clear start, middle, and end, is timed appropriately, has some lead characters, try and tap into the senses, and make sure you have a really clear description of the story and the point behind it. And top tip number 3, just give it a go. Try out that storytelling, see what happens for you, and actually just start practicing and putting it in your little toolkit for work, because it is honestly a great little powerful tool for you to use. We also have some self-coaching questions that you can ask yourself. They are: number 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your own storytelling confidence and why? So similar to how Lisa and I rated our storytelling confidence, we would like you to do the same. Number 2, how could you embrace storytelling at work and move yourself up the scale? And number 3, what are you going to do differently on storytelling moving forwards? Do not worry if you can't remember all of these tips and self-coaching questions, because they will be on our Instagram page, The Coaching Cast, this week. So following the episode release on Tuesday, the top tips and self-coaching questions will follow on our Instagram page.
We really hope you enjoyed today and have some new ideas to take away and try for yourselves. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feedback, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us in 3 ways: on email at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, on Instagram @thecoachingcast, and finally, you can contact us through our website, thecoachingcast.co.uk.
Your support helps more than you may know. So if you like what you've heard today, and also in our other 6 seasons of the Coaching Cast, and would like to help us grow this podcast and also join our CBB community, please leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app. You've got no idea how important these are. Hit subscribe wherever you listen and give us a follow on Instagram at The Coaching Cast. Don't forget, you can also watch each episode on our YouTube channel by searching for The Coaching Cast.
So at this point of the podcast, we choose our personal song recommendations to give you positivity and energy as you launch into your next meeting. As it's the last episode in season 7, we have both chosen a song today. So I have chosen Loving is Easy by Rex Orange County.
Ooh, I've not heard of this.
Oh, it's really sweet. You'd like it. It's quite chill. Oh, it's a nice one. Yeah. Loving is easy. Yeah, check it out. It's nice.
Okay, I need to check that out.
Yeah.
That's a great recommendation. And I have chosen Gratitude by Above and Beyond, featuring Marty Longstaff. So this is a little dance banger to get you all kind of mellowed and upbeat and vibing as you launch into that next meeting. So we are going to be taking a summer break, and we will be back with a brand new season of the Coaching Cast in September. So for now, thank you so much for listening to our weekly chats, CBBs. We hope we have helped you to survive and thrive at work. Have a great summer. And remember, you've got this, CBBs.
So close. It was so close. Oh, I actually thought we were going to get it then. Oh, damn it. So close. Yeah. It's a work in progress, people. Season 8. Maybe we will finally be able to nail that last season episode conclusion. But there we go.
We'll try again.
We'll try again. Take care, CBBs. We'll see you soon.